Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Friday to everybody. Steve Palmer, good to see you. Welcome to Oklahoma. We'll just open it up to questions and just jump right into it. We got Mike. Hang on. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Nice. My question was actually over something you talked about this before. What I made your statement on it. Tree yesterday kind of hinted that the House might not override the veto on SB 1470, Survivors Act that you talked about. Oklahoma has a high rate of domestic violence fatalities. We've unfortunately been a top scorer for years on that issue. You veto this, maybe the House won't override the veto. We have the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board that has come out. We need to do something about this. You just straight up say no. Do you have any suggestions? Do you have any plans of attack outside of this if this goes down?
Well, I'm glad you're bringing that up. I think it's really important. And what station are you with? Okay. Yeah, please report on this because this is really important. That bill, we're absolutely for protecting domestic violence victims and figuring out how to, and we certainly want a judge to consider any previous abuse. So we're 100% in agreement. And I think there's a trailer bill, which means they're actually working on a bill to do what you're talking about, protecting domestic violence victims. But what that bill did, and you can talk to the district attorneys, that's why they were against it, the Sheriff's Association, it was retroactive. You could take anybody that was currently in prison, okay? And for example, you could have your fourth DUI going the wrong way on 35 and kill a man, a wife, and two of their kids. And then you could have brought up some psychological trauma from their childhood that was totally unrelated to that specific crime. That's what the current bill did, and that's why I vetoed it. It was a path too far. It wasn't just about domestic violence victims, a woman that's abused and commits a crime against her abusers. We absolutely want to consider that, and we want the judge to consider that in sentencing, but that's not what that bill did. And so you need to go back and read the bill and make sure you report on that. That's why I vetoed it. But if you'll read my veto message, I basically said what I just said right here is let's actually focus on those domestic violence victims. Let's fix that. And Representative Eccles is certainly working on that with some criminal justice folks to specifically help those domestic violence victims, because we certainly want to help those young women that find themselves in an abusive situation. Yes, sir.
There was a court ruling earlier this week enjoining enforcement of the Energy Discrimination Act. I wonder if you could comment about that, and also on the Attorney General's decision to fire the counsel that represents the state treasurer.
Yeah, so first off, the legislature passed this Energy Discrimination Elimination Act, and we think it's pretty clear. The treasurer had the authority to do it, so disappointed in that judge's ruling. And it's not over. I think he just kind of paused it for a second. But, the bill basically says we're not going to allow companies with our pension funds to discriminate against the oil and gas industry. I think we can all agree on that. We want our pension funds investing public dollars for the benefit of those pensions, right? And so sometimes you've got this ESG-minded funds that might be investing or pushing folks for political purposes or some kind of political agenda, and that's why the legislature passed that bill. When we saw the Attorney General's press release, the thing that seemed odd to us is the treasurer had asked the AG to represent him in that bill or represent him in that case, and the Attorney General turned that down, and that's why he went out to get outside counsel. We support his outside counsel. I know the treasurer went and found the very best. I think Cheryl Plaxico. So yeah, that was kind of unusual. But really, back to the merits of that bill. I don't know how anybody could argue with that. We're not going to let companies come into Oklahoma and attack our oil and gas industry, and that's what the treasurer is trying. That's what he's trying to do, and we certainly support the treasurer in that effort. And we think the bill speaks for itself.
Based on comments you made yesterday during the budget summit, it seems like maybe your position on tax cuts has shifted slightly. On you should get cuts. Can you talk a little bit about that? And also, the Senate's been pushing for new sources of recurring revenue in exchange for additional tax cuts. Can you talk a little bit about where you see recurring revenue coming from?
Sure. Well, first off, let me be clear. I am for any tax cut that I can get the House and Senate to sign and get on my desk. As you know, a couple years ago, I was asking for a 75 basis points or 3/4 of a point tax cut. I've told Oklahomans this the whole time. If I could write the bills, we would probably already have a 0% income tax rate because our economy has been booming so much over the last 6 years. So I've called 3 special sessions. I have been beating the tax cut drum not to keep growing expenses. All right. It's that simple to me. When we have excess revenue, it should be automatic. We can give it back to the taxpayer. And so I've asked for a 0.5 point, 1/4 point. I'll take 1/4 point today. But what happens is the legislature sometimes spins everybody in a circle. Oh, we can't do this. We can't do that. We don't have enough money. We're going to have face some future downturn. Well, let me just tell you, if we keep raising expenses, we're going to be in the same situation in the future by them continuing to increase expenses. So what I said yesterday and what I said on Monday in the budget meetings was, okay, let's just leave the top tax bracket where it is at 4.75, and then let's do away with all the bottom brackets. That would help the poorest Oklahomans. So in other words, every Oklahoman that makes less than $27,100 would pay no taxes. So that's my latest iteration to try to say, hey, let's do something for people that are hurting with inflation. If all of us as Oklahomans have not got a raise for since 2020 of about 25%, that means we've actually got a pay cut. Because when you go to the grocery store, it's costing more money. And if you had to buy a new car, had to get your tires replaced, everything with inflation is costing more. And so why would the government just try to grow revenue, grow expenses instead of giving that back to Oklahomans? The other thing to remember, this money does not disappear. It just doesn't get washed through the government. It stays in the people's pockets. That spends in the economy 7 times on average and actually comes back to the state as far as revenue. That's what we believe. That's what we know historically has happened. Oklahoma used to be at a 7% rate. We're at 4.75 today. And guess what? Every time we've cut, we've seen our revenue increase because we're more pro-business. We have more businesses here. We've got that economy booming just like it is right now. I could talk on, but let me pause right there. I think I've made my point.
Do you have an update about how much it's going to cost to rebuild from the storms over the last 2 weeks? How much state and federal funding is going to go towards that rebuilding?
We're still gathering that, and I would encourage Oklahomans, damage.ok.gov. They can continue to put their damage assessments in. Then our Department of Emergency Management gathers all that data, and then we report that to FEMA to get those dollars into the state. So I don't have a total number yet on how much federal dollars we'll get. We've asked the legislature; they both agreed. Both chambers have agreed to set aside $45 million. Historically, it's always been a 75-25 match. The feds would give us 75% of those dollars, and the state would come up with 25%. And then usually, historically, what's happened is the state would match the local counties 12.5% of that 25. We have a great relationship with the federal government, and so we have asked them for 100% match for the first 90 days and then a 90-10 after that. So we're still kind of waiting for that approval. But we've got a great relationship with Administrator Criswell. She's already come to Oklahoma. I've met with her and talked to her on the phone a couple times. So hopefully we get that done. The president, I think I told Oklahomans, he reached out to me last Sunday just to check on Oklahomans as well. So we've got a great relationship, and this passes through all politics, and they just really want to help Oklahoma right now. And we'll get you the exact number as soon as I get that from our emergency management group.
Governor, this may be a long question, I apologize. After yesterday's budget summit 2.0, Don't know exactly when they'll regather again, so if there's any update on that, let me know. But we've really got about 3 weeks left before the constitutionally mandated adjournment of May 31st. They want to trust and verify they got to get out by May 24th. There's some statements that Speaker McCall made that he believes your manager were about what you will or will not veto. So have you had any conversations about, with legislative leaders about will you commit to not using the line item veto if they get an agreement? If they get a tax cut, will you do that? And if they don't get a tax cut, are you looking to bring them back in June for special session?
Well, it's hard to comment on what I will or won't sign until I see that. I was very encouraged. We're all talking about transparency, and as you were in there in the meeting the whole time, they were also talking about revenue and how much revenue do we have, and we were even talking about some tax cuts, which was very encouraging. But let me just be really clear with Oklahomans. The legislature has a tough job. They've got to try to prioritize what funding goes into what buckets. But the big picture, if you step back, okay, and you think about this, and this is what I've reminded people, my big 3 priorities, number 1, don't increase expenses more than our income. Okay, I think most people understand that. What is your income? We need to spend around our income or a little bit less, right? So that's one thing. And then we have to have a rainy day or a savings account. Okay, so I'm saying let's make sure we keep around a $5 billion savings account. That's a lot of money, but we also spend $22 billion. And most people would tell you need a certain percentage or maybe 6 months of your income in a rainy day type of account. I've looked at all previous recessions, and if we have this $5 billion, we should never have to cut a core services, even if we had a downturn in revenue or we had some kind of revenue failure in the future. So those 2 things are very, very important. The third thing is if we can spend, and right now they're both chambers are talking about, and if you were in there, I haven't added up all the spending items, but what's interesting is if you go line by line and you go, hey, well, this is a good program, let's spend this more money, and this is a good program, let's fund this more money. If you go line by line, that's how you just get this excessive budgets. You have to start with how much are we going to spend, and then you can figure out how to prioritize. You can't just go every single program and be Santa Claus to every single different program. And so if we can spend $1.5 billion in savings, and that's kind of what's on the table, then we certainly can do a $200 or $300 million tax cut for Oklahomans. Okay, and those are my points. And if a budget has those tax cuts in there, we have the savings, and we keep our expenses around where our revenue is, then I'm perfectly fine with that budget. I mean, yeah, listen, if we don't get a budget by May 31st, there'll have to be a special session. And I'm here every single day. So everybody else wants to get out of here on May 31st. And constitutionally, we have to write a budget, right? We need a budget because the fiscal year starts July 1st. So we need to get this done. And that's why I brought everybody together. And I'm, optimistic about the progress. But really, Oklahomans, be engaged in this process. Know what your representatives are doing and how they're spending your tax dollars. That's really, really important to hold your elected officials accountable.
There are 6 candidates, ages 25 and younger, Gen Z as well, from all different backgrounds running for city offices in this election cycle. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think this brings more diversity and broad representation in the capital?
I didn't hear a lot of your question. You said.
So looking at the candidate pool for the election cycle, there's about 6 candidates who are under the age of 25, known as Gen Z. Do you think that brings more diversity and broader representation in the capital if they get elected?
Yeah, so a question, the 20, I guess there's 6 people under the age of 25 running. I think that's amazing. One of the favorite parts of my week is on Mondays, I get a chance to take a picture and visit with all the pages. So these are high school juniors and seniors that are working at the Capitol for a week, learning about state government. And a lot of those 25-year-olds are under or were former pages. And I think that plants something in their heart to, hey, get involved. So, all the high school kids, make sure you sign up for paging next year, because it's really fun to get to know and get to learn how this building works. And we have to be an informed citizenry. So love the demographics. I love the fact that we have everybody represented in this building. This is the people's building, and would encourage more and more of those young people to get involved. It's exciting to see.
Earlier this week, the Oklahoma City Police Chief Wade Early, he was asked about the immigration law, HB 4156. He said that it could lead to racial profiling and could use it hard to enforce. You mentioned the task force last week. I'm curious, is this concern you having as a law enforcement leader say is in positions with this law?
And what he said something about racial profiles. Yeah, you know, this bill, and I've been on a lot of the different stations for the last week or so, trying to assure or give some assurance about what we're trying to do with this law. Again, the legislature wrote this law, and I think most of it is to put pressure on the Biden administration. I think we can all agree we have to have secure borders, and I think it puts more tools in the tool belts of law enforcement. If you are involved in illegal activity, and whether it's the medical marijuana industry, and then they find out you're undocumented, I think this puts more tools in their tool belts. But it's already, this bill did not all of a sudden make it illegal to be an undocumented person. That's already illegal. You cannot be in the United States of America undocumented. That's already against the rules, right? And so I don't know why this bill is, why everybody's getting really, really focused on this bill. However, I also set up a task force to really think about what can Oklahoma do to meet our workforce needs. There's a great Hispanic population, and there's hardworking people that are paying taxes, that are trying to get a documentation status, and the court systems are just failing them, quite frankly. And so we're trying to figure out how can we match up the workforce with employers that need more workers in the state of Oklahoma. And we're excited how that task force is going to, by August, hopefully they'll have a report to me.
Is there a fear you'll have to require them to enforce it? If the chief of Oklahoma City is saying, I'm unsure about this law, do you fear that some police officers might not even try to enforce a law that is on the books?
You know, I'm not, if the Oklahoma City police chief saying he's not going to enforce the law, I'm not going to get into that. The Highway Patrol, the Oklahoma City, Tulsa, I know they've all issued statements trying to alleviate fear. They're not going door to door, rounding people up. But they are trying to make sure we're a law and order state. They're trying to slow the flow coming into the state of Oklahoma. And at the same time, I'm really trying to focus on the workforce piece. And if there's hardworking, tax-paying, God-fearing Oklahomans that want to raise their family, be part of of Oklahoma, be great Oklahomans, be great Americans, we want that in Oklahoma. But we don't want you breaking the law, and we don't want the illegal activity. And so, if you're doing things illegal, you're not welcome in Oklahoma. But if you want to be part of our system, then we want to figure out a way to get that going. There's also 52,000 Chinese nationals that have come across the southern border. It's way more than Mexican national folks coming through. That's only 18% of the people coming across. You've got people on the terrorist watch list, and I think Americans are fed up with the porous borders and the illegal crossings that are coming in, and so we're just wanting the Biden administration to actually fix that. Thank you guys very much.